still we are having some of the opinion on the various modes which are saying that the economic condition of India is not so good, while some other person they have some their own opinion that the condition is quite stable. So we have today two prominent guests. One, Mr. Pankaj Chaube, who is the Associate Vice President of JP Morgan, while another we have Prathamesh Kantji, who is CEO of Egosis, a Bangalore-based company. So Prathamesh, I would like to start from you that what exactly is the current scenario of Indian economic condition, whether it is in a stable condition or it is still going worse towards. So what do you think about?
So, um, so even before COVID, right? So economic, there were a lot of indicators suggesting that economy is particularly not doing that great. Okay, and then of course COVID stuck, and there were a lot of issues related to COVID, and whole world has seen GDP tumble, right, because of COVID. So and that too, particularly India has seen a lot significantly more decline, right? So of course, I mean, call spade a spade, right? Very plain report. Economic condition of India is not that great at this point of time, right? However, the fundamentals continue to be strong. So to say, right? If a stock trace in us, if a stock is publicly traded, right, then the value goes down, but intrinsic value often can pull it up, right? So to say, intrinsic value and fundamentals of our economy are strong, and it will surely bounce back. It's only a question of time, how many quarters, right? That it would come back to 5+%, and then about 10% GDP. So 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 that's a plain simple view on the economy, right? And of course, right, it there have been a lot of issues, a lot of problems, a lot of challenges, and we uh, we especially we entrepreneurs are solution centric people, right? And of course we believe in spending more time in discussing solutions rather than the problem itself. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so Pankaj, the same question that goes to you as well. That what exactly you feel, because you have been in the same industry where the finance is being monitored extensively. If we compare about the Indian economic condition today and across the globe, including US, what exactly you are feeling about it?
Well, so I think it's not a real time just to do comparison as per the country to country, because I can take a live example of the European Union. We have seen the cases are being resurging, the lockdowns are being again brought in place in European Union, couple of countries there. Even in US, since I closely work with the US states, so couple of states, I would say, interstate movement are, I mean, that's stopped right now. So
Okay.
doing a comparison without having a vaccine, and I think it won't be a comparison of apples to apple, because their demand push is different. Our cost and consumer oriented economy is a bit different, right? So when it's a consumer bit oriented, it means that we produce as well as we consume our, and that's where the private investment roles also comes up in our Indian economy. So I think from that perspective, it won't be justified to do comparison, but I can certainly say that I mean, uh, let's say Australia and New Zealand, they're doing fairly well, because the COVIDs are not doing. I mean, the research in COVID is stopped in Australia, and I can see a couple of reports as per from the Auckland economy status. I see that New Zealand is doing fairly well, but from the
Mhm.
western side, I would say Europe is not doing good, as well as a couple of states in America, right? Because the fatality rate is not going down. So when you say economy, so I can say economy from the people side. So as long as we see a death side is going up, it's not a good sign for anyone, right? So
Mhm.
I would say from that side, it's not doing well from all the country perspective. But if you ask specifically for India, let's say, let's talk about on the number side, because the number speaks well. than the narratives that's been put forward by one-sided right wing, left wing, center oriented. So let's go by the numbers. That what's the numbers we have so far, right? So in the recent survey report, as per the RBI, and RBI just put it in the first week of December. So RBI just projected that Indian economy will stop shrinking. I'm just emphasizing the word Indian economy is going to stop shrinking. It means that we have started seeing the green shoots, right? We saw that in quarter two there was a really the economy going down like -20%, right? We see in the quarter three it's going to be like a 0.1%. When it's a point 0.1 is like point 0.1 on the positive side, and then
Mhm.
0.7% respectively in the quarter four for 2021 financial year, right? So from the number side, RBI uh, has like a displayed amount of confidence among Indian economy, and that's where I mean, if everyone, let's say from your side as well as our audience, if they are really closely
Mhm.
watching our stocks, so I can say
Mhm.
that the Nifty as well as the Sensex has really gone above the all-time high, and that's really an indication of sentimental upbeat, right? Not from the number side, but from the sentiment point of view. I would say crossing a Nifty of 12,500 mark and 13,000 mark, as well as crossing a Sensex of 45,000 mark, is really a great sign in terms of sentimental. It's a perceptional point, right? Not from the fundamentals of economy, but from the perception side. Yeah,
Okay,
over to you.
so that's fine. That the 2 points which is coming out of discussion, but there are a section which is essentially, saying that no, the Indian economic that could possibly go down by 23% in negative rate. Now, all of a sudden, the people are still saying no, it is still going down. When the government data and while the other data, which can be called as quite authentic. Let's say the World Bank report, the IMF report, that they are also seeing some positivity in Indian economy. But despite that, a section which is still a kind of putting kind of narrative or a kind of pessimism in Indian society, which possibly could have uh, a bad impact overall in the situation. So still, Prathmesh, do you really see that going to happen, or it is still going to pass it down?
So, so to clarify the question, right? So, there is data, and then there are sentiments, right? Stories
Mm.
built about data, right? So, first of all, the
Mm.
two are very distinct, okay? And different
Okay.
class of audience can build different stories about for from the same data,
Mm.
right? Narratives, different narratives. It is possible to build multiple narratives from same set of data and same set of
Right.
observations. So of course we have current data, we have past data, and we have that so to say time series of data, right? So now
Mm.
based on that, and of there would be a set multiple set of narratives coming in, right? Now it's important to understand where are these narratives coming from, right? And it is highly clouded by personal sentiments, right? So if my sentiment is that of optimism versus realism versus pessimism, all these kind of sentiments would lead to different perspectives, right? So so of course it is possible for multiple perspectives to exist at same time, and still there is no contradiction because it's built on same set of data, right? So when it comes to my view or our view, we surely see we take the lines of more on optimism side, right? So so it's only a question of when would economy start registering so first of all positive growth rate, positive GDP growth, and then go to like 5% and 10% going on, right? And that's one aspect to it, and more importantly it's also about distribution of wealth among the population, right? So that's another indicator of overall economic progress. It's not just the GDP growth rate, right? It's not only GDP growth rate. That of course is one very important factor. It is also about how are multiple sections of society getting benefited from that particular growth rate. So there are both these aspects, and I think
Mm.
it's only a question of time, and with which numbers would start improving, and of course sentiment would change, right?
Okay, all right. So, Pankaj, you throw some lights that the I think you must have seen one of the article by one of the the prominent economist, Mr. Kaushik Basu, has written. He is saying that India's economic condition is worse than wasn't, and it was earlier. It was a 10% growth rate when it was 2010, while in 2020 it is minus or more than 10%. So, how do you see it? Is this the reflection of the real scenario, or this is something that is being cooked upon?
Well, so I guess he's right, and I have. I mean, I don't stand to the stature of his personality just to, I mean, criticize his thoughts, but I can certainly bring a bit different perspective that what he wanted to
Mm.
say. I also see his notes, and he at one side he lauded the GST efforts by government of India, but on the other side he criticized I mean the monetary reforms that government of India did through note bans, right, in 2008. So at one
Mm.
side he was really favorable to one objectivity of government of India. On the other side, he just indicated that it's not going well. So that's from the perspective, and I would say that and since being a candidate of economics, so since I've done, I mean, I'm more from the economic side, I can certainly say that the economic views and the economist views, I would say rather, are really being driven by the class of thought they're coming from, the from the school of thought they're coming from, right? If you
Okay.
see in the recent time, two to three views, different views are there, right? From if they are from the Western economy as compared to the Indian economy side, right? And certainly comparing the way the Western economy operates and the Indian economy operates, it's very different. And I can tell you why. And let me just give me a 20 seconds to bring a perspective what I wanted to say.
Mm.
US government injected the trillions of dollars in the economy during 2008 financial crisis, as well as in a 2000 between, I mean, even in 2019 and 20. But the inflation rate remained low there, right? But that's fundamentally against the principle of economics, right? Because if you inject a trillions of dollars in the economy, certainly the inflation should go up. But that's not happening there, right? But if you see in India, and I'm just talking from the number side, as per the Reserve Bank report that came first week of December, right? We
Mhm.
see our inflation is really up. Our range of inflation is 4% plus minus 2, and Reserve Bank of India is expecting inflation to be close to 6.9% in the quarter number 3 and 5.1% in the quarter 4. So the 5.1 is relatively well within comfortable range, but 6.9 is not within comfortable range, right? But given all those conditions, RBI did not allow to change the monetary policy. And the reason was that just to boost the confidence among consumers so that they can get home loans, they can get the car loans, they can drive the consumer patterns right more aggressively so that the consumer oriented economy that we have, right, at least that gets a cushion point, that gets a green shoots, right? Having said that, the reference that you made to Kaushik Basu, I can certainly say that, and Prathamesh really brought a very good point in terms of looking the GDP numbers from the one binocular lens, right? From what angle you are looking GDP? Certainly, the GDP number were higher in 2010, even 2013, right? But what about the inflation rate? Probably if the people start looking at the inflation rate, that was more than 10%. You see the real estate prices, how that was surging, right? It was really not affordable to the common citizen. Is that now? I can certainly say, yeah, it is now. Even the common citizen can buy home right now, right? It happened because of note bans. So I can say that looking at GDP numbers one from one binocular lens is not going to help anyone, right? Just look at the numbers from all the perspective. How economy is affordable to everyone. Right now, the more challenging thing that is front of common citizen, that the people who lost their jobs, what about them, right? What about the labor laws? What about those people that are still marginalized? They are not in the part of mainstream economy, right? And that's where the real challenges is coming. As per the World Bank report that came recently today, I saw it, right? Millions of people are coming in the trap of poverty in the coming quarter. And that's the bigger challenge for everyone. Hey, how to contain that, how to control that, right? And so long inflation will be high, no one is going to walk into that. Kaushik Basu certainly should have also highlighted the point. What was the poverty rate? He was saying that the people who are earning close to like 39 or 40 rupees, they're not poor. Is that the reality? That's not certainly a reality, but he's not going to comment on that because that won't suit his narrative. That's my intake on that.
Okay, all right. So the same question that goes to Pratmesh, that whether or not whether we may disagree and we may agree, but the recent reflection of RBI report in any report which is coming with regard to the Indian economic state is quite positive.
Yes, I agree. And the positivity, of course, is built along fundamentals, right? So of course, despite the even there are ways to analyze and look at the numbers, right? So even though current set of numbers might not be too promising, but then there are a lot of intrinsic indicators, right? So India will continue, right? So what are the fundamentals where India is strong, right? A high population, high consumer, right? And so demand is there, of course. There might be a temporary slump in demand, but it will surely bounce back, right? And some sectors which have been hit a lot by COVID. So now with, of course, with restrictions being eased out, right? And of course things would start to bounce back, right? So of course these fundamentals would keep us really strong, right? And and it's only a matter of time. And so there might be differences along the timelines when people expect things to bounce back, right? And for us to go into positive growth and 5%, 10% kind of growth, right? But no one would deny that we would bounce back. I mean, there is no question around that, right?
Okay, all right. So thanks for giving a perspective about the economic state in India at this point of time. Now, my second question that goes to both of you, that the farmer protest is going on for last 11 days or last 10 days, I believe. And the reason they are giving that the current laws which have been passed by the parliament, Indian parliament, is not fruitful for the farmers in India, and broadly they are painful for the farmers who are working on the ground, and it should be scrapped what they are trying to tell, where they are putting the pressure on the government. So Pratmeji, since you are working on the ground, you understand whole setup, what the farmers uh, have, and what is this really beneficial or the loss maker for the farmers. So I just want to take your point, that is this correct that the farmers are protesting against the law, should be scrapped, or what exactly you think about?
Sure.
What is the good for the farmers?
Sure. So now getting into a bit of history, right? So why was and one thing to be said upfront, right? So the acts passed in parliament is more of a removal of a law, not bringing in a law. Law was
Right.
there, and now it's more about removal of those kind of laws, right? And now the farmers are so of course we should not use the word farmers per se, right? Protesting farmers, okay,
Hmm.
who are protesting. So they are demanding bringing back of those old laws. That's the right way to put it, right? So now getting to a history, right? Why were these laws brought at first place? So when India got independence, and under the first government and our prime minister then, so lot of thoughts was put. Our first prime minister was truly a visionary. Lot of system being set up still is relevant today, still exists today, right? So things and system were thought of really well, especially entire rural infrastructure, right? So we happen to work in rural areas, and what we see is there would be a system on paper for everything, each and everything. Everything is perfectly solved on paper. Or the
Hmm.
problem is in implementation when it is about the actual practice. Okay, and this is about anything, financial system, about health system, about education system. There would be institution to take care of everything, but the problem is the institution, it's about the working and functioning of institution to deliver the results at ground level. So that has been always lacking, right? It's never the law or the system being brought in that is the real problem. The real problem comes from the implementation and gaps in implementation, and that goes true for every government in India, irrespective of political parties. That is true for
Hmm.
every government, right?
Okay.
Talk about monetization, talk about GST. If intention would be good, but the way it was implemented is bad. Talk about lockdown. Lockdown was important. Intention is good, but the way it was implemented, all of a sudden, short notice, migrant labor crisis. So all the issues are in implementation. It is not in the
Hmm.
law or the system being created itself. So now the APMC Act was brought in 60s. And why was the act brought in, right? At that point of time, the farmers in India, there were farmers, there were consumers. There was no existing marketplace, right? So what do farmers want post harvest? Number one, they want their guarantee of that their produce would be sold in a time bound manner. No
Hmm.
one would want to be sitting on a pile of stock and allowing it to rot and not being sold and realizing income from that, right? Of course,
Hmm.
the second requirement is to realize higher income for the produce. That's an aspirational need and a basic need also, to get paid high. And also, farmer would want this entire process to happen faster for them. They would not want a few months, right? Rather, a few days of time, right? So the conditions, given the conditions India was in 60s, the intention of APMC Act was to bring order and stability in the system. The act created lot of marketplaces called APMCs, commonly referred as mandis. Now the mandis are the places which gave assurance, right? Which gave some kind of guarantee that a produce of farmer would be sold, right? And also it gave marketplace which will have buyers and which will have farmers. So to say, it solved the problem of market linkage for farmers. And more importantly, at that point of time, it brought order and stability in the entire system, right? It brought order, it brought an order in the society and an order in the economy, right? So that was the need of the hour when this act was brought in, a well intentioned act. Now over a period of time, the act got started getting misused by vested interest. That is true for any system, right? So there will always be tendencies by some vested interest to rig the system to capture more value in their favor. So that's a general human tendency.
Right. So that's a
So
very interesting point, which is coming out from the discussion, that there is a vested interest, right? So
yes,
the laws was in place. There have been some changes, and as far as the implementation is concerned, there may be some problem in implementation execution. So that's the one reason. So Pankaj, so I just want to take this point from you, the term which is being used as a vested interest, right? So are you really seeing the same thing in terms of the protest which is going on, or there seems some kind of lacking from the government side either? Please.
Okay, so I mean, thanks, Prathamesh, for bringing the commodity and agriculture market into the perspective that why it was brought, right? So I would focus more on the current situation and probably why it's happening. So I will go in bit detail and wanted to talk about that why it's only restricted to two states. Point number one: why not across all the states? Right? Even Maharashtra is really a big state in terms of economy, in agriculture economy, I would say. Even West Bengal, because the rice food grains is which is one of the top food grain for the people, especially in Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Jharkhand, and West Bengal, that combines roughly close to 70% of population of India. The farmers are not protesting. Are they not really farmers? So what's the reality there? So the reality is a bit different. It's a the center of entire protest is in two states. The reason is that the agriculture market is really structured in these two states, but on the commodity, state government is charging a tax. Yeah, they're levying a tax on them. As per the new rule, right? At least they won't be allowed to levy tax if the farmers are breaching their contract, if they're moving ahead with the private contractors. So in that case, they will lose money there, right? And that's not happening in the rest of the states. So they're not farmers; they're businessmen, right? They're not farmers. So that's point number one. Point number two, are their concerns really valid? I would say certainly it's valid. It was a duty of government to allege those concerns, right? At least on couple of bills, right? And those bills could be, what about if you bring privatization in the contract farming? How this is going to impact? This is going to impact because because they can start increasing the stock. And why they can do? Because at least in, I would say, in food grains, potato, onions, and other products, farm products that are removed from the essential commodities, right? And the moment you remove them from the essential commodities, it means that you give them. I mean, government is allowing them to stock, and the moment a private partners is gonna stock them, right? The prices can go up. So that's a valid concern, but that's not a demand from farmers. The farmers' demand are a bit different. They're not talking about that. Hey, why do you bring potato and food grains in the? I mean, out from the essential commodities. They're more talking about MSPs. MSPs is not a single time mentioned in the farm bills. MSP is not going to go away anywhere. It's just like a CA protest. It was not mentioned about one religion, that whether they can or they cannot. On the similar line, MSP is not referred even a single time. So the protest certainly is valid, but the demand is really more political. And they're mentioning about MSP. MSP is not given. It's a fact, it's on paper. Anyone can go ahead and check. Anyone without having an iota of education, at least they can check that, hey, MSP is not there. Why the hell you guys are protesting here? But the responses are, hey, we're protesting. And if you see their demands, right, they have only mentioned in the top two demands that, hey, remove the farm bills. But what
Hmm.
about the rest of demands? The rest of demands are more on the political side, to remove those prisoners, to remove those pseudo liberals, right? Why those demands right now? At least bring those demands in a different forum. Why about the farmers protest, right? So that's the bigger concern. I stand with the farmers. I'm a son of farmer. I mean, I also grow farms, but I have not a concern on MSP side. At least MSP is there. I'm also accessing for the market. If let's say I'm producing a sugar cane, at least I can allow the sugar cane sell to the market. I can get a higher price. What is the big deal? The big deal is for those big networks who is going to lose the money as a taxes, and that's a bigger concern, right? And that's not the duty of government of India to give them and make them richer. The government's job is to do the structural reforms so that the the agriculture contribution, which is close to 4%, I mean, in terms of, sorry, I mean, the annual growth, which is close to 4% since 1960, that should go up. The agriculture contribution right now, the employment, the dependence is close to 65%. Right? At least that should be reduced, right? That should be the real target. The discussion should be, APMC came in 1960s. Was there any need for reform? Certainly it is. Is that the positive move? We can discuss, hey, it's not a positive, it's a positive move, but we can't just simply repeal all those laws, right? It means we are asking them to go back to 1960s. But India is not the 1960s of India. That's a different India.
Right. So,
I may
so what is the solution? Yeah, yeah, Prathamesh ji. Yeah, please. You were saying something.
add to what he said, right? So very valid points, right? So yes, as he rightly said, the intention of bringing APMC Act was right and it was valid at that point of time. And later on, over a period of time, it got misused. The system got misused by vested interest. And one player that we have missed saying is essentially adats or essentially the uh, traders
Hmm.
dominating MCs who essentially started financing farmers also, and farmers started getting into their debt trap with them. And the informal agreement is that essentially Adat would pay them upfront money, and the agreement is that farmers have to sell their produce only via them, right? So of course that started exploitation from the farmer side, and so that's one big vested interest. Why Punjab and Haryana? Because most of MSP procurements in only in state of Punjab and Haryana, adults are institutionally involved in MSP procurement. Okay.
Okay.
And procurement is high. So and as he mentioned about APMC cess, so that's a big source of revenue for government. So they are said they are going to lose on that, right? So what does changes in this law say, right? It's only that farmers no longer require to sell their produce via APMC. They can sell their produce anywhere else, right?
Hmm.
Right. So now another important aspect is practically what is happening, right? So even with this act going away, right, practically speaking, nothing changes for farmer, nothing. Okay.
Hmm.
The question is, when would farmers start seeing the changes in the law, right? Or what would need to be done so
Hmm.
that they start seeing the changes? And the answer is essentially providing them market linkages, right? So it's fine to say that that today I'm farmer. By default, I only know that my default place where I have guarantee of sales of my produce is my APMC, which I know, Mandi I know, and my default ATM when I'm short of money is my Adat local money lender. How will this get disrupted, right? So of course, for this to get disrupted, I will need I options need to be generated for me, right? Of
Okay.
course, I need to actually realize that there are multiple choices where I can sell my produce, and I need those linkages, right? So if I don't sell via mandi, where can I sell? Maybe to directly to a buyer, or directly to a procurer, or some other channels. But those channels got to be created, and this is where private players and startups have immense business potential and immense responsibilities, and the real responsibility is building all these grassroots layers so that the
Hmm.
disruption can happen, right? In Bihar, APMC Act was already removed. What changed practically? Answer is zero. Nothing changed,
Okay.
right? And right, and so the question is, how do we bring about the change? Of course, the law is outdated and it had to go. Of course, the law is outdated. This is kind of 1991 moment for agriculture, right? 1991 reforms was brought in India, PV Narasimha Rao, Manmohan Singh time, right? And which essentially propelled us into so from medieval age to modern age economy wise, right? And this is the similar moment for agriculture. So of course, this
Okay.
reform long pending.
Okay.
It has to. Yeah.
Okay. So you find no problem in terms of the laws that have been in place,
Yes.
and this is quite beneficial for the farmer, and
Uh,
that's
no.
yeah.
No. Immediately with the change in law means nothing.
Okay.
Practically, I'm not
Hmm.
practicality is a ground reality, right? Law is what?
Hmm.
Something written on a piece of paper and some documents. What does it
Hmm.
change? Nothing. For changes to be brought, of course,
Hmm.
uh, farmers need to see multiple sales option, and they need
Hmm.
to actually see the options of contract farming, locking in prices, harvesting as per the quality, selling, realizing price. So when those kind of solutions starts penetrating, then farmers would start seeing the benefit. Just
Hmm.
changing in law will not change anything, right?
Okay.
But
So
of course,
why?
of the
Okay.
hour,
Okay.
right?
But why these farmers are feeling very angry? They are not convinced. So do you really see that the government has some extent not been able to convince them either, or the farmers they have already made their mind that they have to protest, they have to go against the this particular law.
There is an extent of truth in both these arguments. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. Truth to an extent in both these statements. So as far as the government decision making is concerned, then of course the way of decision making of current government itself is problematic for a lot of people. The
Okay.
decision being taken in haste, not enough time allotted, and discussing upfront with all different multiple stakeholders while taking a decision. It is not
Hmm.
per se a decision being taken that I would say is incorrect, but it is more of a way of taking decision in haste, short
Okay.
notice. announcing, and then finally using iron hand to curb protest. And that is definitely not the culture India is used to seeing, right? So some of issues is related to that, right? But talking
Okay.
about law itself, there is merit, definitely merit in removing this old system. It is outdated, got to go, right? Now coming to
Hmm.
farmer demand, then of course, so as another keyword that I would want to add is small and marginal farmers, right?
Okay.
So the protest, my simple question I would ask is how many of farmers protesting are really small and marginal farmers?
Hmm.
Answer would be low. So where are most small and marginal farmers? State like Bihar, state Bengal, Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, no farmers are protesting,
Hmm.
right? Farmers are not protesting. For them, so I returned from Gulbarga recently, right? It is very difficult to mobilize a farmer for protest currently, right? A farmer would definitely want to scout in his field as of now.
Hmm.
No, a farmer is not a free person, and right, so they have a lot of work. They have to go to their fields daily, and they have to
Hmm.
take care of it. It's called scouting, right? So they are of course busy. It is not easy to aggregate a farmer and organize a protest and all that, right? And of course
Okay.
small and marginal farmers are more busy, right?
Okay. All
More
right.
dependent the
Yeah.
entire thing.
Yeah.
That's
Hmm.
another aspect of it. And the final thing is MSP, the word MSP, right? So first of all,
Hmm.
MSP has zero relationship with changes in these laws. Okay,
Hmm.
MSP has never been through an act of a parliament. Okay,
Hmm.
and at okay, but at the same time, MSP has always been there. It is through
Hmm.
execution and through implementation. So now, finance minister had already made a statement long back that MSP no way is going to go away, of course, right?
Hmm.
And there have been talks around increasing the scope of MSP also from 22 commodities to more. Okay, so concerns around MSP going away doesn't hold, right? MSP is going to stay, and no government, practically speaking, can remove MSP because it can cause some distress. Okay, MSP defies market dynamics, and that's the reason why MSP, it's very difficult to institutionalize MSP through an act of parliament. Okay,
Hmm.
so practically
Okay.
speaking, no government, not even Congress government, forget
Hmm.
BJP, not a Congress government would really think of institutionalizing MSP as an act of parliament. Okay, I take the example of tuar. While MSP procurements were on, 61 rupees per kg was tuar price, 40 rupees
Hmm.
was APMC open market price. That's the kind of gap, and that's almost and this kind of profile holds for most of the commodities covered in the MSP. So MSP defies market forces of demand and supply. So now imagine government through law, okay, saying that all transactions have to happen at MSP rate or more. Then of course India would see a massive food inflation, right? From government perspective, MSP is
Hmm.
subsidy number one, and PDS ration is subsidy number two. Of
Hmm.
course, these can't go away because there are certain segments of society in farming side, it's small and marginal farmers who need more income support, and in PDS side, it's the poor people, right? Not enough money. They require PDS ration support, right? So MSP is
Hmm.
subsidy number one, PDS is subsidy number two. They are always there to stay. They would not go away. No government can pull it for practical reasons. If any government tries any misadventure there, they are not going to come in back again. As simple. The question is only about the extent of coverage of MSP and extent of coverage of PDS. That's the only question, right? And it
Okay.
has
All
no
right. Thank you, Pikmiji, for bringing the point as far as the policies of the government. So Pankaj, it is a very interesting question which Prathamesh has just raised. That there is a problematic, the policy of the government because they have always in hurry. Whenever any laws come, they are possibly not able to connect with all the stakeholder either, or they are not able to convince all the all the related farming organization or any organization to get on. So are you really seeing the same thing, or you have some different perspective on this? The government should have some time at least to connect with
Well,
all the
I
stakeholders.
mean,
Yeah.
I echo his thoughts, at least on the communication channel network process, that the process they followed, the method they followed, just to communicate the masses. and relay the message to the farmers, probably they were not articulated enough, right? So
Hmm.
my take is very clear that they were not articulated enough to allay their concerns and relay their message. That's point number one.
Hmm.
Point number two, the stakeholders, right? I may play a devil advocate and can ask that who the stakeholder would be. Will that be mediators, the middleman
Hmm.
in Punjab? Will they be stakeholders? Will they be stakeholders, farmers from Maharashtra or farmers from Bihar or farmers from Andhra Pradesh? Who the
Hmm.
stakeholder is going to be in the discussion, right? The answer is there is no stakeholder right here. The protests are more in a staggered manner, and it's not across India. It's really centralized in two states near the border of Delhi. Why in Delhi? Because that's the capital. So simple. Why Kejriwal is so interested? Because he has a large stake in Punjab. So that's more on the political side. What about the reality, right? The reality
Okay.
is Punjab and Haryana is said to lose close to 3,400 crores a year as a tax levied. And the moment you allows the moment this laws allows the market produce to cross into a state, because couple of items they're out from the Essential Commodities Act, right? It means they can trade, they can allow the mobility to out from the Punjab, and the moment you start selling those items, whatever you produce in Punjab, let's say you start selling in Jammu and Kashmir, right? Your Punjab government is going to lose those monies, right? So at least from their side, it's a short-term loss for those Punjab farmers, right? I won't say farmers, but for the mandi people, like but let's say you go in a driving license and department, and they say they will be middleman and say that, hey, I'm charging 500 rupees, I will get you done. In the similar way, the middleman works in APMC, right? And who they are the big cartels, right? What government is doing against them?
Viewers, let me tell you, I think we are back now. So, Prathamesh, what is your take on it?
So I would agree. I would agree for the reasons said, right? Why Punjab and Haryana? Why Kejriwal interest? So a part of it is definitely politically motivated, right? Especially political response of political parties, them supporting Bharat Ban and all that, right? And
Hmm.
so my biggest question is still how many small and marginal farmers are protesting in the protest? How many
Hmm.
out of the farmers or the people there, right? How many of them are adats? How many of them are so adat or commission agent, right? And how many of them are real? Many would be like big farmers, right? And how many are really small and marginal farmers? That's the biggest question I would have for sure, right? So definitely, when it comes to like small and marginal farmer, nothing much changes in their world. Be
Hmm.
these laws, don't be these laws. MSP is of course there and going to stay. That is untouched, right? So nothing changes much for them, right? So now commission agents can lose. That's a fear. That's a fear of loss. Okay. So now
Hmm.
if farmers are free to sell anywhere and transactions do not happen through MSP, then they lose on their commission. Government loses on cess. So of course so of course loss for government is there, and loss for commission agent is there, right? So that's a fear, and a lot of these protests are so to say fear driven,
Hmm.
and so to say vested interests are there. However, I mean. Government could have done much better job in uh, consulting all the stakeholders before
Hmm.
taking their own time and then announcing this set of decisions, right? Then things would have been much different, right? It's as we said before, right? It's not really the law, but more how a law is getting implemented, how expectations are being set. That is important. Social unrest is something not good at all, right? It obstructs everyone. No one wants Bharat Bandh on 8th of right. Who wants Bharat Bandh? Everyone wants to um, get on their business, right? So of course any form of social unrest is not good. And so I think I believe some middle path or some negotiations would emerge out of it, and the situation
Hmm.
would uh, yeah. So I do think that the laws, okay, that were removed would continue to be removed, and maybe some assurance on MSP. Government might give some written assurance on MSP. Still, it is a very far-fetched idea of institutionalizing MSP through a Parliament Act. I do not expect
Hmm.
that to happen. I mean, these are my thoughts.
Okay, so what is your take on this point, Pankaj? What do you say? Are you totally convinced with Prathamesh Khanji, or
Sorry. So
you still have some kind of another version of the point it is?
okay. So let me rephrase. So you mean to say what Prathamesh said more on the APMC or uh, having
Hmm.
middle path, or some different thoughts you wanted my take? Can you repeat that, Anuj sir?
I was just saying that what Prathamesh has been saying, that the social unrest is essentially not good. The Bharat Bandh is also not good. Of course, it is not good because ultimately the public properties and the public, inconvenience are concerned with that. So nobody would appreciate that. But apart from this, he has also brought a very important point that the government has some extent been able to fail to convince their farmers at large, whether it is the agent or the commission agent and anyone. So possibly the government should have brought all stakeholder on the same page before bringing the law into the parliament. What exactly you say
So I will cover your second point first. Certainly, I agree that government could not bring the stakeholders
it?
right on table. But my question again came that who the stakeholders should be. Will they be the monopolized systematic cartels, or should they be the real farmers?
But is
Right?
that
And
not
the
the
answer is
government
both.
responsibility? I just want to make a point here. Is that not the government responsibility to find out who all are the stakeholders, whether it is Arhat or the commission agent in anyone? So it is government responsibility to bring those people on the table only and keep everyone aside if they are not related to the farmers. I mean, the actual farming or actual farmers.
So that's my point was that will you bring any laws specific to Punjab and Haryana in Parliament? The answer is no, right? So
Hmm.
the person who is coming on the negotiation table, they are a monopoly cartel, right?
Hmm.
And I am very affirmative in this stance to say that if the moment the government bucks down with a demand, right, just to allay their concerns, gonna be a far-fetching consequences for the Indian economy as in large. And I can tell you why, right?
Hmm.
Right now, there is no process of risk transfer, at least in the contract farming, right?
Hmm.
And who benefits from that? I don't know who benefits, but I know who is losing, right? It's the farmers. If you are not able to transfer your risk because of bad monsoons, right? Who is, I mean, Punjab is not going to impact it because of bad monsoons, right? Because they have a very really well connected agriculture. I mean, uh,
Irrigation system.
that's the water system, right? At least they can water their, uh, all the products, right? But
Hmm.
not about in the rest of India, right? So risk transfers to businessmen, if that's happening, that's a good for the farmers, right? If they're bypassing the essential commodities act to sell it, right, and to store inventory, that's a good, right? And because if you won't bring businessmen to the agriculture products, we know that, I mean, at least I am also a farmer. I know how the concerning is. The moment you grow your potatoes and the real
Hmm.
price of potatoes, let's say 5 rupees per kg, it's really
Hmm.
disheartening, right? It's really disheartening. And similar goes for the potato, tomatoes, and other grains, right?
Hmm.
I mean, we are a really big consumer of gur. It's like a byproduct of sugarcane, right? If the real price is 25 rupees per kg, which you can sell it like 80 rupees per kg in the market, it's really
Hmm.
disheartening for the farmers, right? So at least that's good for the farmers, right? The defeating the monopoly cartel of APMC, bypassing the Essential Commodities Act to allow the more market access, as well as transfer risk process to the businessman. I think
Hmm.
these are the key essentials outcome of this key farm bills. Nothing related to MSP, nothing to do with APMC. APMC is going to exist there, MSP is going to exist there, but there is alternative. Just like we have two, I mean, income tax process, right? Either you
Hmm.
can claim your income tax with the help of your all the investments, or you don't want to claim, right? At least based on the investment. So you have a different process. So there is an alternative system, and that should be alternative to the common citizen. That's what government of India is doing, right? What about the protesters? Certainly, the talk should continue. Protest is harming to everyone, even those protested farmers, right? Because it's a kharif season, and that's going to hurt everyone. But at the same time, it's also a threat to national security. What current standing CM of Punjab said, I echo his thoughts, right? It's a national security threat. Common citizen can't go to Haryana. There is a threat of treachery. There is a threat of everything, even for their life, right? And even losing a one single life is not good, because they lose their life because of nothing. So from that point of view, it should stop. Who is going to stop? It's a duty of government, because ultimately they are the real one. I mean, it's their concern. It's their job to make them happy. It's their job to allay the concerns, right? But should they buck to their demand? The answer is no, because if that they do for the short-term gains, the long-term gains from the Indian economy is going to suffer from that.
Okay, so thank you so much for bringing the point about the discussion that we are doing today. So overall, two or three points majorly which comes forward. The one that the state of Indian economy is quite good as compared to the last quarter or last to last quarter. Second, that the current crisis, the current standoff between the government and the farmers, which are going on for last 10 days or even more, it's not good for the society.